Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy here, and we are back for some more Fire Emblem Heroes. And of course, we just recently got Choose Your Legends 8. 4 brand new spectacular units added to the mix. We have Felix, of course, Alfonse, Bernadetta, and also the female Robin. So I've got the main man, Oblivion, on the hook. What's up, Oblivion?
How's it going? It's exciting times. Like best time of the year, pretty much.
Yeah, Choose Your Legends definitely, I think, out of all the banners, attracts the most attention, because these are the units that we voted for. So I think they have the most popularity overall.
Yeah, and I think like last year they really stepped up the game when it came to like unique factors about the units, and I think they did that with this year too. So I'm pretty happy that they're not just like slapping good effects on the units anymore and calling it like a job done,
Right?
Which is good.
Yeah, I think last year was a little bit more creative than this year though, because that was our first introduction to terrain effects and things like that. So I thought like last year overall was a little bit more like unique in perspective than what we got this time, but definitely these units are doing a lot of interesting and unique things. So
right,
why don't we go ahead and just stop beating around the bush? The point of us being here today is to figure out which one of these units do we actually think is the best one. So of course, when we saw the Fate channel, initial reactions on paper, we may have been thinking one thing, and then actually having the units in our box now, being able to test them and use them, our opinions probably are a little bit different now. So why don't we start things off with the runner-ups? So we're going to start with, I guess, Felix, because he is the male division runner-up. So Felix, long-awaited unit, of course, because I mean, he has been doing pretty good in Choose Your Legends ever since 3 Houses came out, and finally he was able to win, so that's pretty cool. And we're just going to start by doing a quick little recap of what his weapon does here. So he has the Levin sword as opposed to Robin for like whatever reason.
Why? I still don't understand why they did that, because it's not like even 3 Houses fans wanted the Levin sword, right? Everybody wanted the Sword of Maralta. He has 2 preference weapons in 3 Houses. 2. They didn't choose either of them.
Yeah, so just to spite the Robin fans, it seems like they ended up giving Felix the Levin sword, and what this weapon does here is it accelerates special trigger by -2 as opposed to -1. Brand new effect, and I think this is probably going to open up a floodgate where they were just waiting to do this, and now that it's been done, it's just going to happen from now on. We're going to see this way more often. And I'm
hoping not, but yeah, it's a scary effect.
It's very scary, but it's also like it just adds so much flexibility to these units now, because you can combo that with Robin or Marth Ring, and then you're getting -3 permanently. So it just opens the door for a lot more specials to be consistent, like Miracle, Ether, Blazing specials. Like those that had high cost are going to just be so much easier and so much like just faster to get to. So I think that's definitely going to be a big deal. Then he also has distant counter as well as adaptive damage. That makes sense. That's what the Levin sword already does anyway. So like that's not too far-fetched. And then also at the start of combat, if the enemy's HP is over 75%, or if the number of allies adjacent to him is less than or equal to 1, then he gets all stats up 5. He gets a bonus to all of his stats equal to 15% of his speed at the start of combat. He also nullifies guard. And then he also reduces the effects of enemies' DR by half, not including their special DR. So overall, it's a pretty cut and dry weapon. There's nothing like too crazy here besides maybe the -2 cooldown. Everything else is stuff that we've seen for the most part already. So you put it all together, and actually it's as like simple as it is and straightforward as it is. It gives him like everything that he needs right there. We've got a lot of stat stacking. We're getting damage reduction, piercing, distant counter, adaptive damage, and of course the -2 cooldown. So simple but effective, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. That was my initial reaction to that. So I was a bit scared. I was like, this weapon looks pretty basic. There's like nothing like insane going on, compared to like the crazy other preference weapons we've seen. I was a little bit nervous, but then we get to the preference skill you're about to go over, and
yeah, I mean, this is where all of the sauce is. So Lone Wolf, his unique beast skill. If a skill compares unit speed to the foe's or allies' speed, then he gets a light phantom speed effect of speed up 7. Then also, if he has not used an assist skill or been the target of an assist skill during the turn. Then he gets a second action to himself and inflicts isolation on himself and the pair-up cohort if that may apply. And then these are the two conditions that he can get an extra action off of. The first one is condition A, unit initiates combat. And the second one, condition B, is unit took an action without entering combat. This is a really, really good place to be getting an extra action, obviously.
Yeah.
You could just move and then get a second action. Already, that's like blown the door open for Aether8's defense and Aether8's offense, too. Because you can have him stand on a trap and then he just activates it for free, pretty much. And then he could just move again. Or in Aether8's defense, you combine this with like Celica Ring and then all of a sudden he's warping.
Yeah.
Like, how much ground does he actually cover? It's insane, right? Like, he can move 3, then he can warp 4, and then after he enters combat there, he can move again. He can warp another 4. So he basically covers the entire map for the most part.
Pretty gross on Aether8's defense and in arena. I don't know if you've seen him in arena yet.
Oh, like, God,
it's not fun. It's not fun at all.
Yeah, because of course this guy has the brand new BST from CYL, so he's like one of the highest scoring infantry units you can run right now, and I mean, he can just solo half of your team pretty much in arena if you don't have a way to deal with him, which it's arena, so unless you're a whale, you probably don't have a way to deal with him. Very unfortunate there, but yeah, I mean, the amount of reach this guy has is really what sells him, I think. That's like the biggest part of his entire kit, I would say.
It's definitely a major part of it, yeah.
Yeah, and then also his B skill at the start of combat, if his HP is over 25%, or if the number of adjacent allies are less than or equal to 1, then he inflicts all stats -5 on the enemy. He deals bonus damage equal to 20% of his speed, which also procs on AoE specials. And then also reduce the damage from foes' first attacks by 20% of his speed during combat, including when taking damage from AoEs as well. So he gets that true DR both like on AoEs and for protection against AoEs, which is pretty sick. And then also when the enemy attack triggers their, or when the foe's attack triggers their special, then he gets a further 20% true damage reduction based on his speed. So that's kind of like the Excel skill, which, I mean, he also comes with that, where you can get like a second instance of the true DR if the enemies are using specials on you. So you put all this stuff together, and it just like gets to an insane amount of true damage reduction and true damage that he's getting, because his weapon has this too. He gets 15% based on speed. So it's just a lot. It's a lot going on here.
I mean, he's a very... at first, I felt like there wasn't enough stuff going on, but once you start actually seeing it all come together, it's really crazy. And the fact that all of his damage reduction is affected by AoE, or works with AoEs, right? Like, the ability to actually have 40% damage reduction against AoEs is insane. And then you start to add the Excel damage AoE, and the fact that even if it's only against specials, everyone's spamming specials right now. Like, that's like the big thing this year. So being able to just have a ton of flat DR against that is nuts. Like, he's way more tanky than I thought he was going to be. Yeah,
but in that same regard, though, I would say his tanking isn't, like, the craziest we've seen. Like, for example, I think, like, Haithrun overall is a tankier unit, but...
She's gross. Yeah. She's disgusting.
Yeah, so, like, I wouldn't say he's the tankiest unit in the world, but in that same regard, though, he's, like, for an offensive unit like he is, I would compare him more to like a glass cannon, like in the playstyle that he's doing, with just the sheer amount of reach and the amount of damage that he can deal with his specials and AoEs. I would say he's like a glass cannon, but then he's not a glass cannon because he has so much damage reduction that you really are hard pressed to get rid of him.
Yeah, I feel like he's obviously like not the same level as like Emblem Ike or Haithorn, but he's like one step below that. And so, like, having that much offensive power with the tanking power of a unit who's, like, only a step below, like, Emblem Ike, that's kind of crazy. Like,
right.
Once you start investing into him, like, he just does not die. Like, I've had so many people surrender to me SD because they just can't kill him, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. And, I mean, one of the common things people would do with Emblem Ike, since we're talking about him, they would just give him Celica Ring so he can warp in and attack the enemies and just, like, apply a lot of pressure. But Felix does that a lot better than Ike, because unlike Ike, Felix actually has a really strong player phase. And that's not including like just relying on Great Ether, right? This guy, I think he's the fastest unit in the game right now, is he? Or he's like up there for sure.
He's very up there. I think he's like tied for the natural highest speed, but I think other units can get a little bit more because they get like speed plus 3 in their weapon.
But I mean, this guy's getting so many bonuses to speed, like 15%.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So like,
He's
definitely
very
gotta
fast.
Be close.
He's very fast.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at though is that he can player phase way better than Ike for sure. Like he'll attack something and then he can double, and then he's proccing Gust probably twice in one round of combat. So yeah, like basically what I would say with Felix is take Emblem Ike, tone down his tanking a little bit, and then just up-tune his player phase by like 1,000. And that's basically Felix.
Yeah. He's really, really fun too. Like he's just, oh man, this unit. Like I was really nervous about it, and then after playing with him, like I have nothing to worry about. Like this unit's just ridiculously fun to play in every single game mode. He's very versatile, very powerful. I think versatile is the most important thing. Like we were me and Joel were saying he's like a jack of all trades, master of none, which typically doesn't do well. But for Felix, it definitely does. Like he just has so many options on how to build him. So I'm ridiculously happy.
I would say when you say he's a jack of all trades and master of none, I think that's accurate. But then him not being a master at anything, he's still like one of the top options at all of the things. So it's like when you put that together, it starts looking real crazy at that point.
Yeah, he's like a 8 or 9 out of 10 in like every single category.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, sure. Like he's not a 10 out of 10 like Emblem Ike, but sure, he's in every other situation he's a 9.
Yeah, like Ike and Haithrun might be like a 10 on tanking, and then Felix might be a 9 on tanking, but then he's a 10 on player phase, and they're like a 6 or something. So
right.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty nuts. So Felix definitely a phenomenal unit, and he's definitely already shaken up the meta. So
the one other thing I want to just say real quick is that he has 2 skills that are not actually on his skill list, right? You mentioned one earlier. He essentially has like a disarm trap effect in his B slot that just isn't there. So that's also like one insane thing. The other thing is because of how his actions work, he actually can cleanse his own penalties, right? Because something like with like Winter Edelgard, you have 3 actions, but you want to use all 3 actions to attack. Well, Felix just has an action he can just use to move, and that cleanses all his penalties once he's done with that action. So it's actually really, really powerful, especially in something like SD. And it's not even on his like skill list. Like you wouldn't know that without playing with him. So it's really cool.
Right, because like a lot of start of turn units are debuffing right now. So
exactly,
like if he gets hit by Panic, he gets hit by Discord and like all that, he just moves, ends his turn, and then he gets to move again, and now he's stat cleansed. So
even stall too. Stall like, oh, just take 1 step and then it's off.
yeah. So just his kit is so flexible that it gives him access to abilities that you wouldn't even understand unless you playtest him, pretty much, which is the point there. Okay, so I think we've talked enough at length about Felix, so why don't we move on to the second runner-up for the female division this time. So we have Bernadetta, and Bernadetta is another bow unit. Like, I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, they wanted her to be a cav, like a lancer or like some weapon cav, but I don't know. Like, thinking about it, I don't really see any other thing that they could have done with Bernadetta personally. I think, like, just having her be a bow unit is probably the way to go.
I mean, I would have taken anything else, to be honest. Like, I don't think it's bad that she's a bow, but I wish she was a red bow. I think a red bow would have been cool. At least she would have had 4 different types of color of bow. You know what I mean? Like something.
Yeah, I got you.
Like, we already have a blue bow Bernadetta, so I was kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, her design is really good, though, right?
Yeah.
That's the best. That's the most important thing.
Okay, so why don't we get started here with her kit? So she has this weapon called the Inexhaustible. It's an 8-might brave attacking bow. It's got Canto Distant with a max of 3. It's got -1 special trigger. And of course, it is effective against flying type units, like all bows. And then also, if unit initiates combat or there's a bonus active on unit, then you gain all stats of 5. You get a bonus to all your stats equal to 15% of speed at the start of combat. And you also deal bonus damage equal to 20% of your speed, excluding on AoEs, unlike Felix. And then reduce the percentage of foes' non-special DR by half. So, on paper, this really isn't that crazy. It's actually quite a bit weaker than Felix on paper, I would say.
I mean, like it has the key effects you need for a nuke, right? You have a
Right.
brave attack, which is really good, and you have true damage and DR halving, which is also really nice. So
Right.
it has like the key effects. It just doesn't have like some insane effect that like push her over the top.
Yeah, and then her weapon being only 8 might is a little bit like kind of sus.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, she's a brave attack unit, so like they weren't about to give her a full might weapon anyway. So
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so there we go with her weapon. Then we move on to her her C skill here, Paranoia. So unique passive. At the start of turn, grants null follow-up to unit and also grants Paranoia to unit and allies in 2 spaces of the unit for 1 turn. And deals 1 chip damage to unit and all of those allies, which is typical. We've seen all the Bernadettas for the most part have that. And then also at the start of turn, if unit is in 5 spaces of a foe, inflicts a penalty effect active on the unit on the close, or inflicts all penalty effects actually active on unit to the closest foes and any foes in 2 spaces of those foes, and at the same time neutralize any penalty effects active on unit. So, I mean, this is probably the coolest effect that she does, in my opinion at least, where she just pulls the reverse Uno card on the enemies and like cleanses all of her own penalties and then flips them onto the enemies herself. I think that's pretty cool.
It's awesome. Yeah, like if you saw the Shadows showcase for her where like Duo Leon turns off everybody's actions on Bernie,
Yeah.
and then she just reflects it back. It was pretty funny.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
pretty funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with this, and just penalty cleansing in general is really good right now, just considering like how many penalty effects are going around at like unconditionally and also with unlimited range. Like they've definitely gone nuts with that lately. So having a way to like get around that is definitely good. Then also at the start of combat, if her HP is not full, she gets attack and speed of 5, neutralizes effects that inflict guard, and then also there's the paranoia effect to talk about. So at the start of combat, if her HP is not full, then she gets attack of 5, and also if initiating combat, unit can get the desperation effect, so you're able to hit the enemies twice in a row. Then also at the start of combat, if unit's HP is not full, and if the foes, or if the, if the foe initiates combat, and if either that foe's range is equal to unit's range, or the number of penalty effects active on the foe, excluding stat penalties, are less than or equal to, or rather greater than or equal to 3, then unit can counterattack before the foe's attack. So essentially, she's giving desperation and also vantage as a status effect to herself and allies in 2 spaces with paranoia. And then they also just get a flat attack of 5, which is pretty solid. So there's a lot of applications for this passive, of course, where, I mean, you can turn any unit into just like a vantage sweeper, and if they have null C disrupt and like brave attacking and like insane amounts of true damage, you can really start to become annoying at that point. So I think it's a pretty good status effect. The only problem with it, though, is that, of course, a Hardy Bearing just completely nullifies this for the most part, outside of the attack of 5. There's not too many units that have Hardy Bearing built in right now. There's only a couple, and only one of them is even seeing play, which is Legendary Lilina. And then as far as like the seal, there's only one Hardy Bearing seal. So, like, out of all of the Brave units, I think she's the only one with a clear weakness, and that's kind of the reason why I'm more so down on her than the other ones. Like, what do you think?
I mean, she definitely has some weaknesses that kind of pop up, and I think that they're not as clear. Like, obviously, Hardy Bearing is one for sure, but even if you want to use her as like a vantage like tank, I was doing that earlier, like just clearing defense maps with her as a vantage unit. She's weak to not only Hardy Bearing, but also NCD, right? Any kind of flash effect or sweep effect just takes her out really easily because she doesn't really have like any bulk per se.
Yeah.
So that's something right there. The paranoia effect, actually how it works in SD is not the best. It could, because the way it essentially works is you have to have that HP condition, but it's very anti-synergistic with a lot of the main units in the meta right now. For example, units like Micaiah, right? Micaiah has that healing effect in her weapon, which turns it off. I found that out the hard way.
Yeah.
Also, Hortensia. Hortensia would be really good with her because Hortensia has a lot of global debuffs, but Hortensia has healing in her weapon as well. So it's difficult to find like meta units that can work really well with her without turning off that HP condition. Breath of Life obviously is everywhere as well. And Hathorn with her Nectar, right? She also heals.
Yeah.
There's a lot of healing just getting randomly thrown around, and I can turn off this effect, which is kind of suck. So you really have to be very careful with how you plan your teams when it comes to like trying to use that Vantage effect. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, of course, is like the secondary condition. So if the foe has the same range as you, you're good, right? But if they don't have the same range as you, you need 3 debuffs. And that seems easy, but it's really not. A lot of times the debuffs just don't spread throughout the entire team. They only spread to like foes within 2 spaces. And so you have Bernie, she's doing great, and then all of a sudden this unit comes out and just completely just hits her in the face and she dies. And you're like, how did that happen? You're like, oh, they didn't have enough debuffs. So there's just a lot of little things that you don't think about that can really affect your like playstyle, and you have to really consider a lot of things to make sure that she can actually kill everything. The other thing though, I think, is her nuking is really good. I think that a lot of people were kind of down on her nuking because of the banner reveal, right? They showed like her barely killing Emblem Ike.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is like people were kind of like reversing what it actually was. Like it was a scam showcase, but it was a scam showcase in favor of Ike. He actually had Fram behind him, and Fram gives 60% damage reduction. Now, Lagoose Friend 4, cuts that in half to 30, but that's still 30% more DR that Ike had. Obviously it's multiplicative, but still. She actually can kill him pretty consistently. There is like a bit of wiggle room where it's like whoever has the better supports with them. So like Ike can definitely survive if he has good supports, but then she can also kill if she has good supports. So her nuking is actually pretty solid overall, I'd say. The problem is like, as if you've been playing Fire Emblem Heroes for a while, nuking like gets ages really quickly. So that's like the biggest thing for me is like, I don't know, her support isn't consistent enough in my opinion that if her nuking falls off, she'll be around still.
Right. Yeah. So like, I mean, she's the only unit that I don't have out of the batch. So whatever your input is, I'm just gonna go with that. So, what would be your like overall consensus of Bernadetta?
I think she's solid. I think she's a fun, solid unit. She offers some unique support. She's a good unit, right? Like she's just not a meta-defining unit, in my opinion, right? Like she's like a step or two below that. Where if you want to invest into her, make her work, you definitely can, even as just a nuke. Or like if you want to just play with some support stuff, you can. But you're gonna have to build around the unit pretty extensively, right? She's not one of those units you just slap into a team and she starts working, right? She's not like gonna tune Micaiah or like a duo Robin or something like that.
Okay. All right, gotcha. So, seems like a good unit, but then it takes a little bit of excess to get her to work correctly.
Exactly.
Which is what I can gather.
Yeah, good.
Okay. All right, so there we go for Bernadetta. Why don't we go ahead and move on to the female Robin now, who is wearing the exact same clothes as last year.
I can't believe they did that. Like, they actually got the same artist, who I love. I love Wada. She's one of my favorite artists, like all Fire Emblem. But they put the exact same clothes on her. And I'm just like, okay, sure. Like,
Now, listen, I don't care how many mental gymnastics you go through to say this is okay. It's not okay, man. They could have easily just... If you want to say, okay, Robin always wears the same outfit, like, no matter what, it's male or female, like, doesn't matter what class they are, like, what their promoted class or whatever, like, Grandmaster, they always wear the same outfit. So just make her wear a different class then. Like, make her something else. I don't understand.
Imagine if they would have given her 11 sword and she was just a sword unit, like, but instead of giving Rally Spectrum, she gave out Hush Spectrum. That would have been so bad. Their creativity with this one was kind of lacking, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I don't let the fanboys hear you say that, because they're happy with it for, I don't know.
I don't care. I make Awakening fans mad every single time I stream or talk, so it's fine.
Which is funny, too, because I think you liked Awakening a lot, right?
Oh, I love Awakening. I just, I like to call things out when I see it.
Yeah, same here, man. I call out bullshit if I see it. Like
exactly. Right, yeah. I'm not going to give anyone a free pass.
Right. Okay, so that aside, her weapon here, Exalt's Tactics, is a colorless tome, and it's got -1 special trigger. If a rally or a movement assist is used by unit, and if there's no Divine Vein Ice currently applied by the unit or allies, applies Divine Vein Ice to spaces 2 spaces away from target after movement for 1 turn. And also, after unit acts, if Kanto triggers after Kanto or at the start of enemy phase when defending in 8th raids, if there is no Divine Vein Ice currently applied by unit or allies, then you apply Divine Vein Ice to spaces 2 spaces away from unit for 1 turn. So this right here is a very key note where she gets to activate the Divine Vein Ice at the start of turn, even in 8th raids. So, like, if you have her on a defense team, she could just start setting up ice tiles right at the start before the enemies can do anything. So it's very easy to just plop her on a defense and then set her up in a way where the ice tiles are protecting your units even further. Because, of course, where we are right now in the game, like, traps are not enough in 8th raids to, like, defend your units. As we've said already, Felix can just step on a trap and still move again. And there's a lot of other units that can do that, too. It's not like he's the only one. So having a secondary layer of protection for defense teams, I think, is very good. And it's an infinite obstacle almost, where they can't just, like, break it once and it's gone forever, because she's going to set it up at the start of every turn. So having the ice tiles is a really, really good tool for defense. Now, it's also very good in other modes, too. It's also pretty good in summoner duels, where you can use it as a sort of like protection, where if enemies are warping in, for example, like Emblem Celica, who just warps across half the map, if you have the ice tiles in the way, Celica can't actually attack because she has to warp 2 spaces away from units, and if the ice tiles are in the way, then it blocks her from being able to warp. So it's one way to, like, get around that, which is pretty cool. And just overall, like, just having an obstacle on the go is pretty good.
Yeah, it's really strong. Like, it's really, really strong. On E3, it's defense. I've seen people already use it really well, where, like, you have your traps kind of protect your team, and you have your save protect your team, but there's always an opening, right? But with this Robin, you can close that opening up with ice, and it just delays them so much. I heard somebody else, I can't remember who exactly said this, but it's kind of like Duo Leon, but in a healthy way. It essentially takes away actions from the opponent, but they get to choose how to get rid of those, like, right, get rid of the ice instead of just turning off their action.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's a really cool way of, like, negative action economy you can kind of enforce on your enemy team. And it's really strong, obviously, in E3's defense because it just happens naturally. But even, like, in summoner duels, it's very strategic, right? You can use it to set up, like, your team while also protecting them from certain, like, angles. And so I think it's a really nice effect. I'm afraid that they're going to take it too far and they're going to have to nerf it. Like, I could definitely see them doing, like, a duo skill where it's just, like, a wave of ice and then, like, okay, we have to nerf ice now.
Yeah.
But as it is right now, I think it's really great. Like, it's an amazing effect. It's a cool terrain. I'm very happy with it. Definitely better than some of the other terrains we've done.
Right. I would say, like, as far as terrains go, this might even be the best one, I think. It's kind of like competing. The top 3 for sure are the flame tiles, the stone tiles, and the ice tiles, I would say. And I feel like the ice might just be better than all the other ones, because the flame tiles do a lot of damage, and then they also can, like, prevent range units from moving the full space, but that's already been bypassed by them. Like, they can just warp through, or they can have, like, terrain bypassing as the status from iGreen and Lindy, so, like, that's not that big of a deal anymore. And then the stone tiles are great when you're defending, but then also they can be overwritten by other tiles after you get hit. So, like, the flame tiles can just overwrite. The ice tiles, I feel like, are just, like, doing exactly as advertised the whole way through. Like, it's just providing a blockade, and it's just blocking enemies out. And that's exactly what we want. So yeah, I think the ice tiles might actually just be the best terrain right now.
I think I'd have them and the earth tiles tied, because I think earth tiles, on, like, when you're playing a tanking strat, earth tiles are just so ridiculously good.
Yeah.
Like, I just love earth tiles there. So, but I do think Divine Vein Ice is really powerful. And there are obviously ways to get rid of it other than just breaking it, like using someone like Blumera. I think Blumera's value went up a lot if you're trying to do a tank strat, because she can just remove like a whole wave of ice, which is nice. But overall, I mean, it's really, really good, especially in things like summer duels. I think just being able to just pop them up when you exactly need them is so cool.
Yeah, so that's what she does with Divine Vein Ice, but then she's still not done. Her weapon has more effects. So at the start of combat, if her HP is over 25%, then she inflicts a penalty on the enemy's attack speed and res equal to 5 plus the number of allies in 3 columns of 3 rows centered on her, times 3 with a max of 14. Then she also neutralizes penalties on herself and neutralizes guard effects as well during combat. And then also when she triggers her special, she nullifies enemies' DR from non-special skills. So more so just rounding out her kit here. We're getting a lot of stats, possibly up to 14, which has become the new norm now. Weapons just do all
crazy.
stats of 14.
It's so crazy.
Then she nullifies guard and nullifies DR. So I think all of them have this, right? They all nullify DR, they all nullify guard, and then they all have like all stats up 14. All stats up the ass, pretty much. Because like some of them get more than 14.
Right.
So, yeah, it's pretty good. Like a solid weapon. The ice tiles are obviously the main selling point, but then like even taking away that, she still has some good stuff to work with.
Yeah, it's a very solid nuke weapon. It has the key effects she needs, but it doesn't have anything crazy. The ice tiles are definitely the thing selling the weapon overall, in my opinion, like when it comes to a meta perspective. But yeah, it's a solid nuke weapon.
Right. And then we come to her B skill now, her preference B skill. This is where things get pretty nutty. So at the start of turn, if her HP is over 25%, then she grants all allies attack and speed up 6 and Canto 1 if they're in 2 spaces of her for 1 turn. And then she also inflicts Hush, Spectrum, and Panic on the closest foes and any foes in 2 spaces of those foes through the next action. So, of course, Hush Spectrum, one of the better status effects in the game right now, because you can pretty much just drop all the enemy stats by 5 and then inflict like a light version of Scowl on them too. So, Hush Spectrum is one of the more effective ways to deal with Emblem Mike, of course, because if he's not able to use his Great Ether, then he's not really that big of a problem. But I mean, even still saying that, like, there are ways around it too. So like Hush Spectrum is great, but the way that this Robin does it, I'm going to compare her a little bit to Duo Robin, because they are very similar in a lot of ways. I think overall, like for the support, I think Duo Robin is a little bit better, where she can reposition mid-turn and then activate Hush Spectrum that way, as opposed to like doing it at the start of turn, because there's units that can block that, like King Freyr or Attune Micaiah. They can like cleanse Hush Spectrum right at the start. But if you're doing it in the middle of the turn, then it's a lot harder to get rid of. So, like, just strictly as a debuffer, I would say I like the Duo Robin a little bit better.
Okay, I actually like this one a little bit better, just because I feel like it's a little bit more consistent. Like, other than with Micaiah and Freyr, obviously, who cleanse it. But being able to have it on a global range and like hit the team immediately, I like a lot, because a lot of times, if I'm playing Ike, I'm trying to essentially engage on the enemy team before they get a chance to like do the Hush Spectrum on Ike, and then kind of like wreck them that way. So I kind of like it. I like this. I think both have their benefits, obviously, but global range is what really gets me. I think like that ability to hit global range, hit everybody within 2 spaces. It's like really massive, especially on defense too. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a different opinion there. That's like the first time for everything, because usually we agree about a lot of stuff. So, yeah, okay, so I mean, it's not a big deal. They're both good, so it's not like...
it's like, which one's better? Like, they're both amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so also at the start of combat, if the unit's HP is over 25%, then you inflict attack speed and res -5 on the foe. Unit deals plus X damage times 5 with a max of 25, excluding on AoEs, and reduce damage from foe's first attack by X times 3 with a max of 15 during combat. So X is the number of bonus effects active on unit, excluding stat bonuses, and the number of penalty effects active on the foe, excluding stat penalties. So first attack includes their brave attack as well, so she essentially just has like 15 points of non-pierceable DR, and then 25 points of true damage. That's a lot of true damage. God damn. 25? Like, what is that? Like, 10 more than Gambit had from last year, where the Robin had Gambit? That's a lot of damage, man. 25 points. And then she's pretty fast. She has, like, no follow-up. She can hit the enemies twice, most likely. So, she's a good damage dealer on top of being able to set up the ice tiles. So... a very multifaceted unit here. She's giving a lot of support to the team with the Canto 1 and the attack and speed. She's debuffing the enemies with the Hush Spectrum. She's setting up the ice tiles, and on top of all of this, she's a great damage dealer. So, what are we doing right now? Like, what are these units coming out that are dominating the meta? They're doing like 500 things. So, Attune Micaiah, you got like Haithrun, like units that do like so many different roles all put together, I think are really the standard right now, and this Robin is excelling in that regard.
Essentially, yeah, exactly. Like I'd say, like she's essentially a support nuke, right? Like her support is definitely the most important thing on her, but her nuking is very solid. Like it's very good. It won't kill everything, but that's not exactly what you need most of the time. And most of the time, the units that age well are the ones that have the powerful support options, which is exactly what she has, right? And it's faceted in the different types of support too. It's not just debuffing support, right? It's also giving out Kanto, so you're getting that extra mobility, which is a big deal as well.
Right. Yeah, so like just units that can do it all. That is the name of the game right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go with Robin. And now finally we have Alfonse himself, the winner of the men's division. I'm pretty happy my boy was able to get some drip here because he's got the Gustav outfit. So Alfonse, on paper, I thought Alfonse was actually the best one. And I still, we'll get into like how thoughts have changed after using the units.
Right.
But let's first take a look at Alfonse's kit here. So he has Majestic Glittner as his weapon. It's got 16 might and also enables Kanto Distant +1 with a max of 4. And accelerates special triggers, so he's got -1 cooldown. At the start of turn, if there's any allies in 3 rows or 3 columns centered on him, then he's granting defense and res up 6 to himself for 1 turn, and he also gets bonus movement. And also, if his max special cooldown is at its maximum value, then he gets -1 cooldown right there, so he essentially has Time's Pulse built in. Then also, if he initiates combat, or if there are any allies in 3 rows or 3 columns centered on him, then he gets defense and res up X to himself, and inflicts defense and res -X on the foe, where X is 5 plus the number of allies in 3 rows or 3 columns centered on him times 3, with a max of 14. And he's dealing true damage based on 10% of his defense, excluding on AoEs, and reduce damage from foes' attacks by 10% of his defense as well. And also, when he specials trigger, it nullifies DR. So, quite a lot going on here, right? Like, I mean, this is a mouthful.
It is. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. They just keep adding effect after effect after effect.
Right. So, basically, the way that he wants to play is just Time's Pulse into his special, go in, proc that special, nullify the enemy's DR, and then Kanto himself to safety.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, wait, I didn't even finish. There's still another line here. What the hell? So...
Oh, there's the extra. Yeah, that's the second part of Time's Pulse.
Right, yeah. So he has full-on Time's Pulse 4, essentially. After he initiates combat, if there's an ally in 3 rows or 3 columns, then he gets -1 again after combat. So... basically, what this means is that he just has permanent access to his special for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, I mean, speaking of his special, this is where this guy really gets into insane territory. So, Makings of a King, it's a 2-hit special. Boost damage by 30% of his defense, plus defense great talent when special triggers. Reduce damage from attacks during combat by a percentage equal to 40 minus 10 times his current special cooldown, which... is pretty much always 0 because he always has it fully charged. So he just has 40% DR there. And it's also on a special too, so that's non-pierceable DR. And then at the start of turn, he grants attack, defense, and res great talent +2 to himself, and attack, defense, and res great talent +1 to allies in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on him. Pretty wide radius of effect there. 3 columns and 3 rows. To be getting stats like this, like permanent stats too, because great talent is just like raw stats. It just raises your stats. So, pretty good. And then also after combat, if he triggered his special, then he gives attack, defense, and res great talent +4 to himself and +2 to the allies in 3 rows or 3 columns centered on him. And the maximum cap for great talent is +20 for Alfonse and then +10 for allies. So this was where everyone's eyes were focused in on when we saw him in the Fate channel. Like, just giving permanent stats to your whole team like this is pretty broken, I think. You could make the argument that it goes by slow for allies because it's only like 1 point per turn and then 2 points per special. But for him specifically, it's pretty quick. Like, he's getting 4 on every special and then 2 at the start of every turn. So I've personally found that he only needs to proc his special maybe like twice or 3 times for him to really get somewhere to the point where it's damn near impossible to get rid of him in 1 round of combat. So, like, he's like a snowball, kind of. He snowballs out of control very quickly. If you don't deal with him in time, the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. So, I would consider him like an immediate threat. Like, you see him, you got to get rid of him. And you also can't leave yourself open to get hit, because the more he procs his special, the worse off things are going to be.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that my thing was, like, even on initial release, is like that it's very slow. Like, if you think about it, like from a support perspective of him giving out stats, it's not very quick. But for him himself, it's actually pretty fast. I think that was something I kind of underestimated once I actually started using him. I saw that like he just, once he starts just cycling out that special in combat, it starts stacking up real fast on him, which is, you know, obviously what you want, and it's very good because it just gives him so much bulk that he just can't die.
Right.
The one thing, of course, is like in Aether Raid's offense, at least, like typically the most threatening thing comes in first, which is a little bit scary, and that's why you typically want to be able to hit something if you can, right? You want to go in and kill something,
right,
and then get into a nice position. If you can't do that, that's where I found where he kind of falls apart sometimes, is like where he just, if he can't get that ball rolling, essentially, is where his big weakness is.
Right, so if we were comparing him to other Omni tanks in the game right now, I think he plays in a completely different way to them. Outside of just like wanting to just face tank everything, he wants to initiate combat first, so he can start getting his special to activate, and then also his A skill sets up the tiles and gives him some other stats and perks as well. So the playstyle I've found with him is to attack, like, just keep him waiting in the wings. He's just, like, as he's standing there, he's buffing the whole team. And then if you find an opportunity, you have him sneak in and get an attack and then counter out. So, like, you want him as, like, a threat that's just waiting in the wings to start doing stuff, pretty much. And then you could have him be an Omni tank if you wanted to. He's pretty good at that, especially in melee combat, where I don't think there's too many melee units that can reasonably threaten him, to be honest. I think mostly, like, his threats are going to be range units that have fire sweep or, like, effective against Cav, like Micaiah, probably. So what you would want him to do is just focus mostly on melee combat and try to, like, just keep on stat buffing for the team, and then just raising stats with great talent and proccing his special, canceling back to safety, setting up the stone tiles for support. So, like, most people, I think, are looking at him as an Omni tank, but I'm seeing him more so of like a defensive Brave Seliph, if that makes any sense.
Huh. Yeah, that's how I was looking at it. I pretty much played him mostly as an Omni tank, and I found him to be pretty solid overall. I did, you know, definitely find some weaknesses, like the sweep weakness, and also like like, he really does want to go. He's like Brave or Winter Dimitri too. Winter Dimitri is like a unit like this where he really wants to go in and kill somebody to activate all of his effects. Same with Alfonse. So I found that to be kind of similar there. I hadn't played with him really that much in SD. I played against him, but I was kind of like going crazy cheese, so like he didn't really do much to be honest. But that's so in Aether Raid's offense, at least that's where I found him to be kind of like the best as an Omni tank, because it's like where he just gets ridiculous stats really quickly. Like, it just goes insane. Like, you're killing like 4 or 5 units, and then you're just already at max great talent. Yeah,
and then when it's at max, it's like game over. Like, you almost have no way to beat him. So
right.
Yeah, like, how would I even describe him? He's like Exodia almost. Like, you if you don't deal with it right away, it's just gonna get to a point where you can't deal with it anymore.
Yeah, I was saying he's like an I don't know if you play League of Legends, but he's like an AD carry in League of Legends, where like starts off a little bit slow, by the end of the game he's like soloing the whole team.
Yeah, I don't play League, so I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, like we said, he's an ongoing threat, where at the start he's at his weakest, but then towards the end of the fight he starts really getting really nuts. Yeah. So most of my testing with him has been in Aether Raids for the most part. I can totally see him being effective in Summoner Duels with the way, maybe not so much SDS, but like SDR, where you can set up a like really tanky ball defense with like Haythrun and then Myrrh, and then you've got like a bunch of just tanks all balled up together. I could see him being good there, because he can be a great initiator for a team like that while staying close to the pack, and then he's also just buffing your stats with great talent as turns go on. And it's typically not easy to attack into a balled up team like that in Summoner Duels right away, because you need to get some debuffs off, you need to wait a little bit, get some setup first. So while you're doing that, he's just snowballing stats for the whole team. So I feel like he's he's probably good in SD, and then, like I said, for Aether Raids where I've been using him mainly, I think he's pretty good there. I haven't really found any necessary flaws with him outside of the first round of combat where he's at his weakest. Like, that's definitely where you have your chance to beat him, and if he's on offense, then he's tanking the enemies. He's probably at his weakest there, and then if you have him on a defense team, their first attack is probably, like, their best shot at getting rid of him. So,
right,
he's kind of a hard unit to grade in that sense, because, like, his ceiling is very high, but then his basement is very low. And, well, I shouldn't say, like, very low either, because, like...
Right.
Even without...
Contextually.
Yeah. Like, basically, compared to his ceiling, his basement is low. But then him at his maximum is really tough to get rid of.
Right. Yeah, I found him to be pretty fun, and like he's definitely strong. I don't know, for me, I just don't know exactly where he fits in the meta. He's one of those units for me where like I don't know where I'd use him at like max potential. I think he's good in ST, but I don't think he's gonna be. I think like we need a map where Cavs can really dominate for him to like really show off. I think like if we could get a good Cav map and then you have like some Pathfinder and he just goes in and destroys everybody, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
But currently, the problem is like the current SD map is like completely Cav like hated. So it's not the best place to test him there.
Yeah.
And then Aether Raid's offense, I found him to be pretty solid there overall. He does have some weaknesses that are kind of similar to Emblem Ike's, where he is really weak to Hush Spectrum. Like if he loses his special, he's in the big trouble. So definitely want to bring some special jump support for him, either like in Nethany or just like any of the other Robins or whatever. I found that to be very good. And then the other thing is not all defense teams are going to let you get in there and attack with him. And so you definitely want to bring some kind of alternate terrain for him. Like someone like Lumera is really good as well. But if you have those things, if you prepare correctly, he puts in work. Like he definitely puts in work.
Right. Yeah, really the only flaw I can say about him as a tank is that he can't have null C. Like that's really it.
That's the big one for sure.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that will change. Like it's definitely possible we get like a drive NCD support or even like an Emblem ring that gives that NCD. So I think in the future it's definitely possible for him to get like a big upgrade in that way. Or if they release other units who give out great talent, because then like once you start having multiple sources of that, that's where things go nuts. Like, you're like your whole team's getting +4 to all stats every turn. You can't deal with that, right? Like you have to kill it immediately.
Yeah, because remember last year how they had Rally Spectrum on Robin, and that was like at the time probably the most busted support effect in the game. And we all thought, oh, they're not going to do this again for a while. And then, lo and behold, how many units have released so far that have either Rally Spectrum support or they just straight up give Rally Spectrum? And
Yep.
Like
we even have a skill for it now.
Right. They went nuts with that. And I can definitely see that happening with Great Talent. Especially when you consider that Great Talent speed is not a thing. They are definitely going to do that. Like, there's going to be a unit that has Great Talent speed. So...
that was the biggest indicator to me too. I'm like, okay, they left room for like some unique, great talent support there.
Exactly, and like you said, if more units start coming with great talent, and then you have them all on the same team, and it's like at the start of turn, all of a sudden you're just getting all stats up 4, and then that just continues to escalate after each turn. It really gets to a disgusting level. So
yes, it does. Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean. As far as, like, where I would rank Alfonse, I guess we can, like, go ahead and talk about, like, where we rank each unit now. So, on initial viewing of the Fate channel, I had it like this. I had Alfonse in first. I had Felix in second, but, like, tied with Robin. I thought they were, like, just about equal, but I had Felix slightly above. And then I had Bernadetta in last. And then after getting to playtest the units, I have Felix in first. And then I have Robin slightly ahead of Alfonse, but they're like tied in second for me. And then I have Bernadetta in last. So, I guess like RIP Bernadetta.
I don't think it's an RIP situation. It's not like I don't think it's like a Brave Tiki situation where she's just like kind of dead on arrival. But I do think she's just the weakest out of the 4.
Yeah.
So for my initial reaction was that Brave Robin was the best. And then in second place, I had Alfonse and Felix. I wasn't really sure who would be better out of the two of those. And then in last place, I had Bernadetta. And then after playtesting, I have now Felix at number 1. I've been just completely blown away by that unit. He's way better than I thought he was going to be. I have second place. Robin. I think she's just a little bit worse than Felix because of the lack of uniqueness, and also the fact that like her Hush Spectrum is great, but there's already, like we were talking about, there's already special jump supports everywhere, so there are ways to counter her essentially.
Right.
And then in third place I have Alfonse, and last place still Bernadetta.
So it seems like we have the exact same, like, consensus.
Pretty much the same.
Afterwards,
yeah, pretty close. Yeah,
yeah. Maybe not so much at the Fate channel, because like you had you had Robin in first during that, but like and now after testing the units, I think it's pretty clean cut too. I don't think there's too much sway on this either. Like most people seem to agree. You said you were talking to Phaeology and DTM before this, and who did you say they had in first again?
Robin. They think Robin is the best.
Okay, and then they have Felix in second though, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I think it's probably a toss-up between those two. Felix, to me, like, Felix looking at his kit on the Fate channel, it was like, he's just doing so many things that are tried and true. Like, he's getting a bunch of bonus actions. He's just like a God Sword, and then on top of that, he's also like a damage dealer. So,
yeah.
To me, like, that just looked like very cut and dry. Like, he's going to be good, but I didn't know how good that was going to be until you put it all together and put it in practice, right? So, like, that really swayed my opinion a little bit. And then for Alfonse, like, what set him down a little bit for me is the fact that he does at least have to initiate combat once or twice before his stats really start get going. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. Like, most of the time, he's going to be just standing there, but even standing there, he's still raising stats, which is good. So, like, him not being able to just be immediately a threat, I think, has to deduct some points from him. Although, like, as we said earlier, later in the game, once he's started getting the ball rolling, then he's a real threat at that point. And then for Robin, for me, it's like, I knew the ice tiles were going to be good, but then seeing it in play and like seeing how many ways you can use it, how tactical it can be, I think it's a really healthy way to design, or like a really healthy instance of game design where it really just comes down to how smartly you apply it for how good it's going to be, as opposed to it just being overtly busted.
Yep. The Kanto one too really adds another level of like choice making, which is nice.
Right. Yeah, I was actually considering, this might sound odd, but I was thinking of taking Creation Pulse off of her for a Kanto Curb, because I feel like having the ice tile, like having the ice tile in two spaces and then with Kanto Curb, like it just adds such a wall for enemies to try to break through, and especially for summon or like Aether Raids where they have to be in 4 spaces to break the ice tile of her, and then she's just going to Kanto Curb them. So, like, to me, she seems like probably the most cut and dry, like, Kanto Curb unit you could make. Even though you are losing a little bit by giving up her C skill, but like
not
we
that
said,
big a deal, honestly. Like,
yeah,
you can even use like the Slaying Ring and like have a pretty consistent special still.
Exactly, and it's still not too hard to just get Rally Spectrum on her anyway. Like we said, there's a lot of units that do it. So yeah. I guess we could talk about the passives a little, because there are some new passives that were introduced here as well. I guess that'll be like the final thing we talk about. So,
before that, real quick, though, if I could say one thing about... So, like, for Felix, the real reason why I think for me that he raised so much is that the secret passives of Disarm Trap and the penalty cleansing was a big deal. And then the other thing is Slaying 2 is like really, really, really broken. Like, I think people are underestimating how good Slaying 2 is. And the fact that it can be Slaying 3 is like where it gets really gross to me. I have some secret tech I built with, like, let's say a Miracle Felix, and I can pretty much make him never die almost. Like, it's pretty consistent. I put him up against a rank 1 defense, and he just kind of sat there. He didn't kill everything, but he didn't die. And I was like, this is kind of stupid. So, like, I'm kind of hoping that they don't add more of this to the game, because I think that's the point where, like, things just get beyond, like, crazy. I don't know if I can handle that, so. Yeah, I think that's, like, one of the big things that really pushed him, like, over the top for me.
I feel like that's kind of where the game has been trending lately, where there are tanks, they may not be able to kill everything, but then they don't die either. So it like, leads to a long and drawn-out war. We've been seeing that quite a bit in... at least Aether Raids I've seen, where like Haythrun on
Haythrun.
defenses,
Yeah.
and she's like setting up all these like far savers.
Oh my gosh, she's a menace.
Yeah, right now it takes way more than one action to get rid of something. You can't just like one turn everything anymore. So, like what you said there with Felix, I think is definitely good stuff. Like he could just run Miracle and stay alive forever. Even if he's not killing things, he's not dying either. So like there is value in that for sure.
Yep.
Okay, so to wrap us up, we're just going to talk about the new passives introduced by every unit. So Alfonse has 2. We'll start with him. He has Fortifications, which is a new A skill. Does attack -5, and then does defense and res up 7. Basically like a reverse life and death, kind of. And then also, if the unit is in a space where there's a Divine Bane effect, then you get distant counter. And then also, if you initiate combat, you get defense and res up 6, and 10 flat DR in combat, excluding on AoEs. And then also, if you have acted during the turn, after you move or after you use Kanto, then you apply Divine Bane Stone to spaces in 2 spaces of the unit. So, I would liken this to basically like the defensive version of Flared Sparrow, where you attack and then you just set up your defense afterwards, as opposed to like attacking and setting up an offense.
Yep. Definitely. This skill is so overtuned, it's ridiculous. Like they gave it so many effects, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are they thinking with this one? It's really, really good. The only thing that's bad about it is that ranged units can't inherit it. Because I really wanted to give this to Fallen Leon.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of mages that would have made good use of this. Like, also, Nurgle would have been pretty cool with this.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, God.
But
maybe it's a good thing they didn't do it.
Right. Yeah. But I think the one good thing, though, is that, like, there's still close and distant bonus doubler, which are still, like, really good distant counter skills. So, as good as this is, I don't think it's, like, just stealing all of the spotlight from those skills either.
Not completely, no.
Yeah, and then on Alfonse's B skill, he has Reopening, which, I mean, it broke the game in more ways than one, right?
Oh
Considering,
my God.
like, Panette can equip it and then just close the game. So
literally.
Yeah, Panette meta right now. They released the most broken unit ever as a GHB. So okay, so Reopening is basically like Guard 5, I guess we could say. At the start of combat, if your HP is over 25%, then you inflict attack -5 on the foe. You also inflict guard on the foe. And then you get bonus damage based on X% of defense, and true damage reduction based on X% of defense during combat. And X is based on whether or not your unit can make a follow-up attack. If they can, then X is 10. If they can't, then X is 20. So we're getting more passives inheritable that can just give you non-pierceable DR, which we thought that wasn't going to happen, but now we've got like so many skills that do it. And this is basically Lagoo's friend for non-infantry, is what I've looked at it as. Because you could just put this on any unit for the most part. It's only for melee, I think, but it's also not movement locked, so you can use it on armors, you could use it on like flyers and calves if you wanted to. So I think infantry units are still locked into Lagoo's friend, but then everybody else, I think, is going for Reopening now.
Yeah, Lagoo's friend is definitely better than this, but like it's only for infantry. So like, yeah, I agree. I kind of want to use it on Ashnard personally. I think that'd be fun.
Oh, that's a good idea. Because like with him, I was thinking more so like Wyvern Rift or like Guard Bearing 4 or something. But yeah, I mean, giving him non-pierceable TR is pretty good too.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so there we go for Alfonse's passives. He also has Breath of Life 4, so I mean, this guy just right out of the box.
Crazy fodder.
Yeah, this
crazy.
Insane amount of fodder. He's got like one of the highest fodder values in the game right now, for sure.
Easily, yeah.
Okay, then on Bernadetta, we have one brand new skill here. We have Curved Shot, which is basically like a true DR special for bow type units. So it's got 2 hits, and then also you get 30% bonus damage based on the greater of enemy's defense or speed. And then also if you triggered the special, or if your special was ready during combat, and your unit can attack during combat as well, then you get 40% non-pierceable DR from the enemy's next attack. So this is like the Dragon's Roar, the Armored Blaze, and like all that stuff for both types, pretty much.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm not like a massive fan of it, but I don't think it's nice to have it in the game. But I wish that it's kind of weird because I wish it was a higher cooldown so that we could use it with Lagoo's friend 4 for Shinon. You can't. So I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, Like, that's actually kind of weird, too, because all the other specials that do this are 3 hits, and then this one's only 2, so that's, like, a little weird. But,
yep.
In that same regard, though, like we said, like, Lagu's Friend, as good as it is, there's also reopening now, so other bow units can still, like, run that and then still run, like, higher cost specials, which is good. So, alright, there we go with Curved Shot. Then on Felix, we have one brand new skill, which is Endless Tempest. So this is a new C skill. At the start of turn, unit can move 1 extra space, regardless of odd or even turns. And then also, if the unit initiates combat or if the foe initiates combat after moving to a different space, then you get all stats as a bonus based on the number of spaces from starting to ending position of whoever moved with a max of 3. And you also nullify the enemy's bonuses in combat. I don't even know why that's there. Like, that's the most random thing to toss into that. Like, what?
They're just like, let's throw some power creep up in there. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like one of those Guidance 4 and Soaring Guidance deals where it lets your allies warp and then it gives drive no follow-up. Like, why was that even necessary? I don't understand. It's just like, it's like beating a dead horse. Like, there's no reason to have that. It's just
so overtuned.
Yeah,
but I mean, I love it. It's really fun to play with. But yeah, it's definitely overtuned.
Yeah, so this one is inheritable by your infantry and flying melee type units, and I think this is definitely going to fit right in with all of the self-buffing C skills right now, like Incited and Pledge and like Oath and stuff like that. I think this is definitely on that level, if not better, for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then finally on Robin, we've got one brand new skill here. So her new C skill, Creation Pulse, which is like times pulse 5. If a penalty is active on the foe, then you get attack and speed up 3. And then also, if your attack can trigger your special, then you get -X cooldown based on the number of penalty effects active on the foe with a max of 2. So, basically just like Rally Spectrum on the go is what I would call this. But
yeah, pretty much.
It's not as consistent, though, because the enemies have to have 2 penalties on them, and that's not always a guarantee. It's not like it's hard to do, but it's also not hard to get rid of either. So it kind of goes both ways in that regard. But I think it's a pretty good skill. People have been talking about giving it to Emblem Mike, so he doesn't need Rally Spectrum support. So he could just like get to his own special on his own, which is good.
I was making jokes with Joel and DTM about this, and I was like, you know who the real winner of Choose Your Legends is? It's Ike. Ike got a new A skill that gives him a way to get around AoE damage reduction, which was his biggest weakness.
Right.
And then he has a new C skill that gets around his other weakness of Hush Spectrum.
Right.
So he can be completely self-sufficient now. And I'm just like, why do they keep giving Ike new toys? Like, they need to stop already.
No, I mean, this is like the complete opposite of... Remember Fallen Edelgard came out and she was like a broken tank, and then every unit that released afterwards was designed to beat her easily? This is like the opposite, where Emblem Mike comes out, and then every skill, it feels like, that comes out afterwards just makes him better. It's like, they have no chill with Ike. He's just getting better and better.
If I was an Ike fan, I'd be mad, but as an Ike fan, I'm overjoyed, so I'll take it.
If one unit deserves to be the best unit in the game, I would say it is Ike. But like,
oh yeah, definitely. Easy.
In that same regard, though, it gets to a point where it's just like overkill. Like, can they just please stop? I'm getting a little tired of Ike just getting buffed every banner.
I'm afraid, because like, one day they're gonna just nerf him. Like, they're gonna hard counter him, and it's gonna be something ridiculously powerful because it needs to be. Yeah.
Oh my god, can you imagine once we get to the point where like every offensive unit comes out is able to beat him in one round? Like, what would that mean for the rest of the tanks?
They're dead. They're very dead. Because Ike is like a solid step above every other tank. So
yeah,
scary place to be.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that covers just about everything about Choose Your Legends 8. Is there anything else you would like to add before we hop out of here?
The only thing, of course, is like, I know we're telling you who to pick, like from a meta perspective, but pick your favorite character, of course. Just playing with your favorite character makes this game fun, and the meta shifts so quickly that like there's no point in like trying to chase it, honestly. So just have fun with it. And all these characters are fun. Like, that's the number one thing I definitely want to push, is that all these characters are fun. I've been having a blast with them. So if they're one of your favorites, don't worry if they're not the most powerful out of the batch. They're still fun.
Yeah, I don't think there's any loser here either. I think all the units are pretty good. It's not like Brave Tiki, where she was just kind of bad.
This is like our last month to make fun of Brave Tiki.
Yeah.
She's about to like get a crazy refined
my
like in
God.
a month. So
we
got to get it all out now.
Yeah, she is. I think for sure too. She's probably gonna be the best one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If they don't, like, they really hate Tiki if they don't give her a really cracked refine.
Yeah, it's usually the tanks that get the best out of the Choose Your Legends refine, if you think about it, too. Because, like, Brave Ike from the first one, then, like, Brave Dimitri and Edelgard both got good stuff.
Brave Hector.
Yeah, Brave Hector.
Yep.
The only anomaly...
Brave Alm's, like, the only one.
Yeah. Cause, I mean, that was an anomaly anyway, because there wasn't really a tank for CYL3. They were all just, like, offense.
Yes. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so, like Oblivion said, just pick your favorite. They're all good. Like, you really can't go wrong. So just pick whichever one you like best or whichever one fits your playstyle the best. And that is going to wrap us up for this one. So thanks again to Oblivion for stopping by and being part of this discussion. And if you haven't already subscribed to him, there's going to be a link to his channel in the description of this video and also at the end of this video as a tab you can click on. So that is going to wrap us up. This is your boy Tacho signing out. So take care, fellas. And I will catch y'all again on the flip side.
Have a good night, everybody.